It's 3:15 in the morning, March 13th, 1964, Queens, New York. A 28-year-old woman named Kitty Genovese parks her car and starts walking the 100 feet to her apartment door. She never makes it. A man attacks her on the street. She screams for help. Lights turn on in the apartment windows above her, and according to the New York Times, 38 of her neighbors watched what happened next. Not one of them came down. Not one of them called the police, until it was far too late. 38 people, one dying woman, zero help. When that story hit the front page 2 weeks later, it horrified the entire world. How could 38 ordinary people just watch? What kind of monsters live in New York? But here's what you need to understand before this video is over. You would have been window number 39. And by the end, I'm going to prove it to you. And then I'm going to tell you the one sentence that breaks the spell. Because there's also something about this famous story that almost nobody knows. Something that changes everything. Hold that thought. First, the science. Because 2 psychologists read that same newspaper story and refused to accept the monsters explanation. Their names were Bibb Latané and John Darley, and in 1968, they ran one of the most unsettling experiments in the history of psychology. Here's the setup. You're a college student. You're placed alone in a room with an intercom, having a discussion with other students in other rooms. You can hear them, but you can't see them. Suddenly, one of the other students starts having a seizure. You hear him choking through the intercom, gasping, begging for help. Now, the question isn't whether you'd help. The question is how many other people you think are listening. When students believed they were the only other person on the call, 85% rushed out to get help. When they believed 4 other people could also hear it, that number collapsed to 31%. Same emergency, same choking voice, same you. The only thing that changed was the crowd. Latané and Darley called it diffusion of responsibility. When you're the only witness, the responsibility is 100% yours. There's no one else. It's you or nobody. But add 4 more witnesses, and your brain quietly does the math. Responsibility divided by 5, 20% each. Someone else will handle it. Someone more qualified. Someone closer. The problem is, every single person in the crowd is running the exact same equation. Everyone is waiting for someone, so no one becomes anyone. And it gets worse, because your brain has a second trick, and this one is even sneakier. In another experiment, Latané and Darley sat students in a room filling out questionnaires, and then pumped smoke through a vent in the wall. Actual smoke, slowly filling the room. Students who were alone, 75% got up and reported it within minutes. But when students sat with 2 other people who'd been secretly told to ignore the smoke and keep writing, only 10% said anything. The rest just sat there, waving smoke away from their faces, rubbing their eyes. Some of them kept filling out the questionnaire until they could barely see the paper through the haze. Why? Because in an ambiguous situation, you don't just look at the emergency, you look at other people's faces to decide if it is an emergency. And their faces look calm, so you stay calm. What you don't realize is they're looking at your face, and your face looks calm too. Psychologists call it pluralistic ignorance. An entire room full of people, each one privately alarmed, each one publicly calm, each one convinced they're the only one who's worried. A room full of smoke, and everybody's waiting for permission to panic. So now you know the machinery. Diffusion of responsibility tells you it's not your job. Pluralistic ignorance tells you it's not even an emergency. That night in 1964, 38 windows, and behind every single one, the same 2 programs running. Someone must have already called. If it were serious, someone would be doing something. Except, here's the twist I promised you. That's not what actually happened. In 2007, researchers went back through the court records, the trial testimony, the police reports of the Genovese case, and the famous story the one printed in the New York Times, the one taught in every psychology textbook on Earth, was mostly wrong. There were never 38 eyewitnesses. Most of the people counted in that number heard something, a scream, a commotion, but from their windows they could see nothing. It was 3 a.m., the street was dark. Many assumed it was a bar fight or a lover's quarrel. At least one neighbor did shout out the window, and it worked. The attacker ran. The first attack ended because someone yelled. Evidence suggests at least one call to the police was attempted after that first attack. And in her final moments, Kitty Genovese was not alone. A neighbor, her friend Sophia Farrar, ran down the stairs and into that dark hallway, not knowing if the killer was still there, and held Kitty in her arms as she died. The most famous story about human coldness in history contains an act of almost unbelievable courage that the newspaper simply left out. So the story was a distortion, which means the bystander effect is a myth too, right? No. And this is the strangest part. The story was flawed, but the science it accidentally inspired is some of the most replicated in all of psychology. The seizure study, the smoke room, dozens of experiments since, in labs and on real streets. The effect is real. The math is real. More witnesses reliably means less help. A legend that wasn't true revealed a mechanism that absolutely is. And that mechanism is in you, right now. Think about it. Have you ever walked past someone lying on the sidewalk because everyone else was walking past too? Ever watched someone get harassed on a train while a whole carriage stared at their phones, including you? Ever seen someone drop their bags, stumble, struggle, and felt your feet just keep moving? It even follows you online. Someone posts a desperate message in a group chat with 200 members and gets silence. Not because 200 people are cruel, but because 200 people each did the same division you just learned about, and everyone's share rounded down to 0. The bigger the group, the louder the silence. And afterward, that hot little wave of shame. What is wrong with me? Why didn't I do something? Here's the reframe, and it's the entire point of this video. Nothing is wrong with you. You didn't fail a character test. You ran a program written into every human brain that activates automatically the moment a crowd appears. The freeze isn't cowardice, it's arithmetic. Your responsibility divided by the number of people watching. The neighbors of Kew Gardens weren't monsters. The students in the smoke room weren't cowards, and neither are you. But, and this matters, understanding the program doesn't excuse you from it. It arms you against it. In 1978, psychologist Arthur Beaman ran a beautiful experiment. He gave one group of students a lecture explaining exactly what you've just learned. The bystander effect, diffusion of responsibility, all of it. A control group got a different lecture. 2 weeks later, each student walked past a staged emergency with an unresponsive person on the ground and another bystander doing nothing. The students who had learned about the bystander effect were nearly twice as likely to stop and help. Read that again. Just knowing about the glitch cuts its power in half. Which means this video you're watching right now isn't trivia. It's a vaccine. So here's your one takeaway. One sentence that shatters the entire effect. If you're ever the one in trouble, injured, unsafe, in an emergency, do not shout, "Somebody help me." Somebody is nobody. You'll trigger the exact diffusion you just learned about in every single person who hears it. Instead, pick one person, point at them, look them in the eyes. You, blue jacket, call an ambulance, now. The moment you single someone out, the math dies. Their share of responsibility snaps from 1 of 50 to 100%. They can't hide in the crowd anymore, because you just pulled them out of it. And if you're the bystander, same trick, reversed. Don't wait to see what the crowd does. You now know the crowd is waiting for you. Be the first mover. Say it out loud. That's an emergency. I'm calling. You, go check on them. One person acting doesn't just help the victim. It breaks the spell for everyone watching. Sophia Farrar didn't wait to see what her neighbors would do. She ran down a dark staircase toward a scream, alone, at 3 a.m. The crowd is a spell. Be the one who breaks it.